Hey everyone, today's video is how to budget for your pageant. I will discuss some areas that I think are worth spending money in, that you do want to invest in, and then other areas that are really easy to spend money in but aren't necessarily necessary and don't move the needle for you as much. Now, the winners know that it's not about how much money you have and how much money you spend that determines if you win the pageant or not. Because if that were the case, it would just be rich people winning every pageant, which, even though it's common, isn't every single case. I'm an example of someone who won Miss California on a budget of $1,500 from local all the way to state. So it is possible. It's all about how you use the resources you have. It's not how much you spend, it's how you use what you have. So regardless of if your budget is $1,000 or $20,000, this video will give you some key takeaways for being smart with how you use your resources so that you increase your chances of winning your pageant. Having a small budget doesn't mean that you can't win. There are so many examples of contestants with very meager budgets going all the way, all right? That's why this road is paved with dreams, and that's why so many contestants enter, because it's not about how much cash you have in the bank, it's applying yourself properly. I've seen contestants and I've judged contestants who clearly had enormous budgets, had very expensive gowns, but I just couldn't see myself scoring them high because they lacked in other areas. They underinvested in the skill development piece. On the flip side, there are many contestants who have won in dresses that they purchase at thrift stores. So, this video is just to inspire you with some ways to think about prioritizing what to spend money on and what not to. The first thing about setting your budget is you want to make sure you're considering money that you actually have. I don't want you thinking that money coming in from sponsors that may or may not actually come through should factor into your calculations. Just because things happen and sometimes you might be assuming that money will be coming in, but if you start making decisions without having confirmation that you have that money, then you have to start from scratch later. So I'm trying to help you avoid that. Make sure that you're working with a budget with money that is guaranteed. And then start prioritizing on the areas of competition that directly affect your score. All of the other stuff, the hair, the nails, the shoes, all that stuff I will discuss a little bit later, but those don't count. What I'm talking about is your competition wardrobe, what you're wearing in interview, your evening gown, even headshots. Depending on your system, your headshot will be scored. And in the Miss America system, our headshots weren't, but it is such an important part of your brand that headshots are always worth paying top dollar for if the headshot you're getting is truly extraordinary. Different systems also have that one photographer that has sort of identified the look that the system tends to reward. You will notice that a lot of these title holders will oftentimes get new headshots done from these same photographers after they win. That is a good way of identifying who should do your headshot. If you really want to take it seriously, I would consider spending the money to get those headshots at that photographer, because not only is that photographer artistically and creatively established with the look that the system's going for, that photographer is also a key networker in the sense that if you leave a really positive impression with that photographer can go on and say nice things about you. But anyway, that's a secondary video that I will be making another time about how to manage your brand, specifically with people in pageants. After knowing what money you have to spend, then you want to think about what areas you can't not pay. Okay, so these are the required areas. It could be fees, it could be a specific number of tickets that you've promised to sell, it could be an ad page that you have to buy, it could be an opening number outfit that you have to wear. Like, these are areas that you have to count against your budget because those are just things that you agree to pay for by entering. So those things, you really can't fight. Those have to count against your budget and you have to budget for those items. Make sure you know what those are ahead of time. That way, before you agree to compete, you have all that information ahead of time. You don't want any surprises of like, oh, by the way, I went $1,000 over budget because I didn't ask these questions ahead of time. A lot of systems will have information like this, especially the entry fees, if there are any, listed on their website. But if you attend a pageant orientation, or if you have a one-on-one consult with a contestant coordinator or even the executive director, it's totally fair game to ask these questions. Hey, are there any fees associated? What can I expect to budget for this experience? all better to find out ahead of time so that you're not scrambling once you've already entered, realizing that you've signed up for something that you can't afford or that you don't really want to spend that much money in. Totally good questions to ask. A representative from the pageant should also be able to tell you in an itemized way where every dollar of that entry fee is going. Sometimes pageants can be very expensive, and the reputation for pageants is that it is reserved as a hobby for the elite and the wealthy. There is some truth to that because some pageants really are expensive, and if you are trying to buy every dress full retail, yeah, absolutely. But there are also other pageants that are billed more as scholarship competitions, and they really want to make themselves as equitable, and they want to, level the playing field for as many contestants as possible, regardless of your economic background. So, just ask these questions. If there are entry fees, where's the money going? Is it going to hotel? Is it going to meals? Is it going to audiovisual production for the stage? You can use that information to get a sense of how the pageant operates. The two areas that I recommend not being cheap with are your competition wardrobe, because a lot of those outfits really do influence your scores, and your pageant headshot. Now, I mentioned this earlier, but the thing is with pageant headshots is that is your first impression to the judges. You really want to put your best foot forward. How you look does matter in your overall branding, which then affects your scores. Even if the headshot itself is not directly scored, it factors into sort of this foundational story that you're telling judges. And generally, teens and younger contestants can kind of get away with not having super professional photos, but for the Miss, this becomes increasingly important. So I would shell out top dollar for the best headshot photographer in that system. Approach them. If they offer hair and makeup as well, yeah, give it a shot. For instance, Matt Boyd and Meredith Boyd, they were very popular in the Miss America program, and they actually traveled to different states as well to reduce the travel costs for some contestants. So if you can get on their newsletters and follow them on social media and find out when they're coming to your neighborhood, that might actually help you not have to pay to go to them. Another thing you can do if you're really on a budget is team up with some other contestants who are also on a budget and see if, say for instance, 3 contestants want to split what would usually be one contestant's 3-outfit day. Because the packages that these photographers put together sometimes entail, a 3-hour shoot with hair and makeup and 4 outfits or 3 outfits. But if you're on a budget, what you can do is team up with some others and say, hey, would you be willing to share what would usually be a 1 contestant 3-outfit package so that all 3 contestants get 1 outfit? It's just worth thinking out of the box, even if the package isn't listed on the photographer's website. Photographers are independent creatives, they are independent owners. So if you come to them and say, hey, I'm on a budget, but I found 3 people who would like to split the value, what do you think of this? Just because it's not offered at that price doesn't mean that you can't propose something that's fair. Because the truth is, that's how life works. Even if you don't see something on the menu that you want, just ask and find out if they'll do it for you. And photographers have generally been, very willing to work with young women. We don't always have a ton of money, and it's just worth asking. So in summary, if you can't afford the photographer you really want, you can find a couple of other contestants or anyone looking for a headshot. Say, hey, how about the 3 of us come together and pay for what would usually be one person's 3-outfit session, so that every one of us gets 1 outfit, even if it means it's short and even if it means you don't get a ton of selection. It's just, thinking outside of the box, and it'll make every single person's headshot a lot more affordable. Now, the biggest area that contestants constantly overspend in is competition wardrobe. But the key to this is to really communicate your budget if you are shopping in person and really ask for multiple options within your budget. Even the dress manufacturers know that people are on budgets. There have been incredible prom lines that are less than $1,000 that have elements of the much more expensive gown. You also want to give yourself plenty of time, so you want to start early, because that way you have more time to look through different options and from different sources too. There are lots of ways to find your evening gown, including buying on Poshmark, buying in person, even working with an up-and-coming designer for an inexpensive custom gown. I include a lot of those strategies at this video here about finding your evening gown. So in addition to headshots, evening gowns, competition wardrobe, the fees that are mandatory, the expenses that you can't get away with, including hotel and flights if you are traveling for your pageant, what's left? It's everything else that you would think of in a pageant. We're talking shoes, jewelry, hair supplies, hair and nail grooming appointments, any talent lessons, physical training, gifts, hair and makeup services. These are all things that can really suck up the rest of your budget super easily. But the reason why I'm mentioning it now in this video is that all of those things I lump into the resourceful bucket. Being resourceful means that you can always find a cheaper and decent version of these things. So for instance, with hairspray, you can use what's already below your kitchen sink. You don't necessarily have to buy the best. You can also go and purchase it at Ross, TJ Maxx, or a discount store. It's such a commoditized item, you can definitely get it for cheap. It's the same with shoes and with hair appointments and nails and grooming. I'd say getting a good haircut, you do have to kind of pay for, but with nails, you can do your own nails yourself. And with grooming and waxing, there are at-home DIY kits that you can use. For me, I was a ballet dancer, so I had to budget for ballet lessons, but instead of taking private lessons, I would take group lessons because it was $12 for a group lesson rather than $60 for a private. So with physical trainers, it's kind of similar. If you need a physical trainer to do your workouts, then unfortunately you have to budget for that. But if you want something bad enough and you don't necessarily have the money, then work out on your own. It's free to run 5 miles outside and eat salad. It's all about discipline and resourcefulness at that point. Gifting is also big in pageant culture, but if you don't have budget for gifts, there are clever ways for you to either paint something, you can bake something, you can take a nice picture and print it out and frame it. There are ways to make people feel valued, but for cheaper. One area that gets really expensive for contestants quick, that adds up, are hair and makeup services. If your pageant allows you to have your own hair and makeup team backstage, you're probably going to have some contestants who take advantage of that. And it's absolutely okay if you can afford it and if that helps take your mind off of things and makes you feel more confident. But on the flip side, I'm going to share what I think you should do using an explanation of a basic economic principle called OpEx versus CapEx. OpEx stands for operational expenses and CapEx stands for capital expenses. It is as simple as getting a coffee from Starbucks or a Peet's Coffee every time you feel like having a drink versus investing in your cappuccino machine or a fancy coffee machine. So in one example, you're constantly spending money for the coffee with no end in sight, but you get the convenience of getting the coffee whenever you want. But with the cappuccino machine, you can make as many coffees as you want, any time of the day, to infinity and beyond. Another example of this is like buying fish versus buying yourself a fishing pole. In economics, it really refers more to ongoing costs that could balloon and just go on forever versus investing in the equipment that will bring the cost down for you. I think of makeup services in which a team does my makeup and my hair, which I then wash and take off at the end of the night, as OpEx. It's a one-time thing. I am done, and if I want it again, I have to pay them again. Versus makeup lessons, which is CapEx, which is so much smarter because if you ever plan on continuing to compete in pageants or go out on appearances and you want to kind of grow your brand and your ability to succeed in this world, I really recommend just investing in the makeup lessons. If you do makeup services every time, that gets really expensive. It really adds up and you don't walk away with any newfound knowledge. You're kind of vulnerable. You're at the mercy of the skills of someone who you employ for that one-time service, versus putting all of the money that you otherwise would spend on multiple makeup services, multiple hair appointments, and putting them into lessons, into teaching yourself how to do it. Because if you teach yourself how to do it, you can do it for yourself for as many times as you want, and there's so much value in that. At the end of the day, I fell in love with pageants because it was a great platform for skill development and growth and resourcefulness. So that's why I'm sharing this video, because I'm, imploring you to start thinking out of the box instead of just spending money on things that, like services that you will just wash right off. Invest that money instead on top of the line makeup, tools, hair extensions that are reusable, and skills, because skills are truly the way that you will teach yourself how to fish, and that's the only way you really level up in life. My Asian is showing. My parents have always spent money not on stuff, but on skills, on growth, on experiences, on education. And, I'm on my soapbox at this point, but I'd really implore you to do the same, because you can use makeup lessons and that knowledge to accelerate yourself in a way where paying for repeated makeup services over time is just going to drain your bank account, and you're not going to be left with an improved self. So it's basically, do you want to have the convenience and the ease and the expense of having someone do your makeup for you every single time? Or do you want to instead put all of that investment into teaching yourself how to do your own hair and makeup so that you can have a coffee anytime you want from your espresso machine? You are your own espresso machine. Invest in it. There are a couple things that are free but definitely require your attention and are worth mentioning. The very first thing is having your paperwork looked over to make sure it's perfect. I don't think you have to hire someone. You can just ask your most grammatically gifted friend to look it over, but make sure that you do that, because having a resume that isn't polished and isn't proofread is just too risky a way to sabotage your first impression. So if you have to throw money at the problem to make sure this is done, then do it. The second thing is to post on social media often. Now, social media sites are free, but they do cost something, which is your time. So just make sure that you budget time to be able to post consistently throughout your campaign for the title. And it's worth also learning how to use some basic photo editing using apps like Facetune or Snapseed so that you can market yourself to the best of your ability. Another thing is thank you cards. Thank you cards are not that expensive, but make sure you have them. One thank you card goes a long, long way. And then lastly, this is definitely free, but there is so much value in this. And this is just conducting yourself with good interpersonal skills, smiling, and turning on the charm every time you are in your pageant. Whether your pageant budget is $3,000 or $30,000, it doesn't matter. Your chances of winning, I would say, are just as good as long as you are resourceful, as long as you prioritize how you spend that money. You want to spend the money on the areas that are going to move the needle for you, that are scored, okay? Competition wardrobe being the most obvious one. The next priority after that, I would say, are anything in skill development, because those are truly investments that you will take with you long after your pageant is done. Being a title holder only lasts 1 year, but the skills and the learnings, the relationships, the growth that you experience in your bid to compete, whatever you invest in yourself will come back to you tenfold and help you so much in life. That is the beauty of pageants, and that's why I'm making this video. I've made a pageant budgeting template that I'm inviting you to open. It's in the link below. Just make a copy and it's yours to keep and modify as you see fit. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please give it a like, a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye.